Hell yeah, we're on. My friend, it's a huge honor. I'm a fans. It's so cool. There's so much stuff to talk about. You guys have a new records after all those years. You're back in the scene. It's a great time. But for people that don't recognize the face behind the glasses,
Mine
who
or
the
yours?
hell are you?
I'm Dave from the band Diesel Boy. And You wouldn't be it's been 20 plus years since you might have seen my face. So it's probably grayer and my head a little balder than the last time you saw it anyway.
Yeah, the tricks is the hat.
That's right. Yeah.
You look amazing, guys.
Thank
These
you.
will you have a special place in the heart of people in Quebec City, and the scene too. You were part of the huge wave that exploded the world. Sorry, I got snitchy. It's so intense, and and yeah. So you were part of a beautiful scene back in the days. Everything kind of fell apart at the beginning of 2000. But let's get back at the beginning. I'm curious how music came to your life when you were a kid.
Um, Geez, I mean, it was always around. My parents had a record collection. I guess my earliest exposure was their records, like the Beatles and Simon and Garfunkel and stuff from the '60s, Bob Dylan. I grew up in Los Angeles. There was a million radio stations, and I guess when I was like 8, 9, 10, something like that, I discovered the radio and was listening to all the stuff that was popular on pop radio. Duran Duran, Men at Work, Wham. We're talking '80s was the era that I sort of grew up listening to music. So those were the kind of records and the bands that I was listening to at my sort of when I started having my own taste or whatever. It was the pop music of the time.
And how did you came to sing, and how did it came to your life?
Yeah, I mean, I had when I was probably about that same age, my parents forced me to take piano lessons, which didn't really stick because they didn't want to be forced to play piano. Later on, I was more interested in wanting to play, I don't know, at the time, what seemed like a cooler instrument. So I, asked for a guitar and eventually got one. And I had a couple of different rounds of taking lessons, but really, I think I learned just by playing and singing. My dad played guitar and piano, and he had a book that had like the chords for all these songs from the '60s. He had these books and printouts, and so I kind of learned. I learned to play and sing and learn kind of songwriting and song structures from, some of those bands that I mentioned earlier, like Simon and Garfunkel and the Beatles and Dylan and, kind of folk music and the '60s pop music from just sort of learning those chords. A lot of those songs were, kind of simple, or at least I would gravitate towards the ones that had kind of simple chords that I could play and kind of sing. I didn't have any intention of being a singer per se. But when Diesel Boy started in college, I guess I was the only one that was like, I guess I can do it. So sort of by default, I just became the singer. I was the one writing the song, so it made sense. But yeah, it certainly wasn't because I had a beautiful voice or I had some burning desire to be a singer.
No, sometimes it's destiny, and I think it's the case
Sure.
in your story. But that's cool because as growing up in the '80s, it's cool that you took the melodies that you got in your head and put it in something punk rock more fast, but still you learn quick that writing song is all about the feeling and the emotion and passion you put in it more than being very virtuose or being the
Sure.
best.
Yeah, and as I got older, my taste changed. Obviously, I was like a teenage metalhead. Once I got into junior high, middle school, and high school, I discovered Motley Crue and Metallica, and it was the '80s, and it was Los Angeles, and so hair metal was everywhere. And so that became throughout high school. That was sort of my favorite kind of music. But I simultaneously, I was in jazz band in high school, so I was exposed to lots of stuff. And it wasn't until college that I had my freshman year of college. My roommate was super into Bad Religion, and he turned me on to Green Day before they were a sort of known band. And so Bad Religion, I couldn't believe how fast they were playing, but also how melodic it was. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. So that was kind of my first exposure to punk rock. So it wasn't until I was like 18 or so that I, got turned onto that stuff.
Wow, for me, it's the best band in punk scene. My favorite band, Bad Religion, are amazing.
Well, and it speaks to what you were just saying. They're really a band that they played really fast, but they also had beautiful melodies and 3-part harmonies, and so all of that spoke to me. It was sort of like, oh, this is like the Beach Boys or the Beatles, but times 100 speed.
Yeah, those power harmonies that they got, they just got better with time. It's so cool. But
And the lyrics were really deep too.
yeah, I'm reading Greg biography,
Yeah.
Greg Graffin, and it's really interesting because yeah, how the writing process came to his life, and the words too, the meaning of every word, and to be powerful in your writing, and it's incredible. But I asked the question because I always love to know the background behind the music I'm listening to, and in case of Diesel Boy, I'm not surprised because there's a lot of stuff in what you create over the time, and you have to be really open minded to arrive with something like that because it was really original and different from most of band of your era.
Well, that's nice of you to say. Thank you. I don't
So
know, we didn't set out to do anything specific other than, we weren't trying to be different. We weren't, and people might argue that we weren't, but yeah, we were just, trying to, I guess, make the best songs that we could. But, and I guess, like you're saying, you, a songwriter is just an amalgam of all of their influences, and you can't help but have that stuff creep out, I guess.
yeah, yeah, and then like everybody, it's not recreating what you heard, but those people, they make you understand that you can do it. It's
Yeah,
that's the beauty of punk rock. You don't need to
yeah.
be the best. You just have to play.
Unlike with all the metal bands that I was listening to, all those guys could really play. Like, all those guitar players could like shred a guitar solo, and that was not in my future.
No, metal you
Bad
can't
Religion
suck.
didn't have guitar solos. Green Day
No,
doesn't have guitar solos.
it's true. It's true, but it's well written. And
Yeah,
it's another thing. The band have passed the test of time. I'm sure that since you guys came back, you realize that there's way more people that are aware of the band than back in the days, new people, and it's cool. With the pandemic, a lot of people got time to listen. So yeah, there was, I'm sure, a few song people, oh yeah, I know you because you're the band that did, My Pants Are Falling Down. But getting more into the discography, and a lot of people were looking for those bands that maybe they heard or just got from compilation, and just, oh, I'm gonna listen to their records, and found out, oh man, Diesel Boy, they were amazing. What you record back in the days was funny, fun, but still you did it in a serious way, and I think it passed the time
I mean,
test.
I'm continuously surprised that people are still listening to the records, and we did like 1 million streams on Spotify last year, and we haven't put out any new music in 20 plus years until the last week or whatever. So yeah, my sense is that a lot of it is people who are listening to us back in the day. But yeah, I mean, I would be thrilled to be able to, have new people discover it or rediscover it, or, whatever the case. That's, one of the amazing things about making a record, is that, it can live forever. Like, you make it and you put it into the world, and then you lose, it's not in your control anymore. And, maybe nobody will care. Maybe some people, it will be important to whoever finds it important. Maybe it's no one, maybe it's someone, but to me, that's the magic of making art, is you make it and you put it out in the world, and it can live forever.
Yeah, it's so true. Joe Strummer said it. Through music, you can live forever, and you never know. And it's cool. And like you said, everybody has a different vision of the art, a different feeling when they listen to it. And I'm sure people talk to you about the songs, and oh man, I'm sure you were talking about that, and you're like, no, not at all.
I mean, again, that's a beautiful thing. Yes, I wrote it, but everyone, it means to everyone whatever it means, and that's how it should be. If you go to a museum and you look at a painting, it gives you a feeling in some way. Whether it was the same feeling that the person who painted it had in mind, who knows? But doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, it's living, and that's another thing, there's an evolution with the way you play the song. I'm sure live, there's difference than when you started up or you
Sure.
released the record. So it's cool. It's living, and the crowd make are part of that, and everybody with the energy it changed. So yeah, it's all about getting people together and have fun. And it's still crazy that getting back to it 20 years later, the excitement is still fucking there, and we're in our 20s, the 40s and 50s, not in our 20s anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was, one of the other motivators was, there's all kinds of festivals that didn't exist when we were doing this 20 years ago. And, if you look at the bands that are headlining and playing the festivals, most of them are bands from, 20 plus years ago. Like, there's still an audience, for those kind of, classic, even though they weren't the first wave of punk bands, but some of them are still going too. So yeah, they're, I mean, nostalgia, and a lot of those, we used to call them kids. They're not kids anymore. They got kids of their own, and they've got jobs and disposable income, and they want to go relive some of their youth, or, get in the pit and hear that music. And it's great. I'm grateful that there's still an audience there, and that, and I think punk rock, maybe because its origins are in the underground, same with metal, there just remains a vital scene for that kind of stuff. There's a whole, metal underground that exists, has existed since the advent of metal. Same with punk rock. I don't know other genres as well, but it started in the underground, and because of that, though, I think it will have it has more longevity.
Yeah, yeah. I think what happened in the punk scene when it explodes with the Offspring, Rancid, and of course Blink and Green Day, it's the money. It's always the money. It kind of destroyed the scene, the emo. All the major label drop the punk band and goes with emo. Emo is the thing, and then 2 years later, like ska, it went down, and then it's all on the ground, and people think it stopped, but it's not. Ska was always there. It's always great, man, because there's a long history, and there's people that make it alive, and that's what
Yes.
happened with
And
that scene.
the infrastructure of all of that, the record labels that were signing those bands are still around, and many of them are still around, and it was built on the backs of the DIY movement, and people putting on their own shows, and putting out their own records. And so I think that spirit helps keep it all alive.
It's true. It's so true. So when did you start writing the new stuff with the band? And was it something that you plan doing before the pandemic? and how the idea of getting you back together came also.
Yeah, I mean, this record is strange in that, you know, some of the songs were written like 10 years ago, and some of them were written as recently as the pandemic. You know, we tried to have a reunion record many years ago. You know, I've been in Seattle since 2000, so you know, 23 years almost. At the end of kind of Diesel Boy's original run, I moved up here. I took a job at a music.com that got bought by Microsoft. And so I relocated up here and, you know, started a career in tech. So, you know, geographically, it was challenging because I was up here and the rest of the guys were in California. But enough time had gone by that, you know, we wanted to do it, but we also had kids and wives and mortgages, and it was just hard. So we had maybe 10 songs done, and we made a demo of the 10 songs, and we sent it to Fat Mike, and he listened and, you know, said he liked it, you know, but there wasn't quite enough there for a record yet. So, you know, keep writing and do some more, and you know, maybe you'll have something, but it just, you know, we just lost steam. We just never got it all together. So some of those songs have been hanging around. I had another band for a few years, and I played a couple of those songs in that band. And then over the pandemic, you know, Greg and I, our bass player, you know, just started talking, and, you know, two of the guys from the old days, you know, either didn't want to do it or just, you know, weren't in a situation to do it. And so, you know, we talked about whether we could make it work and if we could make it work. And it seemed easiest for us to be sort of based in Seattle these days. And so I found a couple of other guys. And so it's, you know, it's me and Greg from the old days and two newer guys. And we spent, you know, a year and a half sort of, trying to get all of these songs to sound like you know, one kind of body of music. So it's been kind of a long time. I guess that was a big part of the work, was not only learning to play together as a new unit, but also you know, trying to get these songs to sound like a record. You know, also the first time we tried this, technology hadn't come as far. So, you know, these days it's super easy to, you know, make good sounding demos on my laptop, and I can send them to Greg, and he can add his bass part and send it back. And so the ability for all, or the need for us all to be in the same room all at the same time, just isn't there like it was even 10 years ago, or whenever it was that we tried to do this the first time.
It's so true. Things have changed so much, and it's changing fast. And yeah, that's so cool. You know, I'm sure you're one of the few bands sound like California and Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not a big Seattle is not a big pop punk town. You know, there's a lot of metal and a lot of indie rock, but it's definitely, you know, skate punk. You know, there are some bands, but it's not like it is in Southern California or even Northern California, or probably maybe even Quebec. I don't know.
Yeah, Quebec, you know, as we have now a scene, Quebec City, Montreal's getting back to it since the last 5 years. So yeah, we have a really cool scene. Mute is playing around the world. But yeah, Seattle, because I did a couple of interviews, and even back in the days, there was a punk scene. I think Nirvana is a kind of punk band when you look at it, but it was a different beast. You know, there was not the same emotion involved in the music. And I don't know if the weather's changed, but it was really depressive back in the days. So the music got through the music, but now things have changed. And Seattle, and it's like when I say when something explodes, it's different after that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. You know, the thing about grunge, you know, yes, there was a lot of bands. All the labels came sniffing around for those bands, but it also, you know, you're right, I think, in that, you know, Nirvana was a punk band, but all those bands, you know, they had it was a similar movement to punk rock. You know, there was a scene, an underground scene with all those bands that were, you know, Sub Pop was a small label, and, you know, they were putting out records, and they existed outside of the mainstream. And so that spirit is still very much, you know, alive here. You know, hip hop is big here, metal's big, indie rock. It's always been a big music town. Jimi Hendrix is from Seattle. So there's still a lot of music here and a lot of you know, a lot of opportunities for bands, but I just, you know, punk rock, at least not our flavor anyway, is not the dominant strain. But yes, it's still gray and cloudy, you know, and rainy most of the year.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Climate don't change like that, like
No,
Vancouver.
exactly. Yep, same weather.
So yeah, so it's great because I didn't feel it was like there was some old stuff. I really felt it was all new stuff with a new chemistry. And yeah, it's still following, you know, the path you guys took back in the days. It's a killer records. I was not surprised because I know you guys are good in songwriting, but it's always you're curious how it sounds 22 years later. And it's crazy. It's cool. It's a great record. It's very well balanced, well produced, well written, and people love it, man.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I think we thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think that was the, you know, that was the goal, was to try and make it all sound like one work, and not like one of those records where it's like all the leftovers from your other records or something, you know. So yeah, that's great to hear. I thank you.
And is it more easy with time for the new one, the new songs to write them, or still it's a challenge even with you got more experience?
I think it's harder. I find it harder. You know, for starters, you know, so many of the old Diesel Boy songs were written from some place of like romantic longing. Like my heart was always broken by some girl, and so I was just sort of like always reeling from some kind of heartbreak, or that, you know, I just found topics to be much easier back then. And I think you know, once you've, you know, the more songs you write, I think the harder it gets to not repeat yourself, or to try and not find yourself falling into the same you know, easy paths or something. So it definitely feels like work. You know, I don't necessarily enjoy the process while I'm doing it, but I enjoy it when I'm done, you know. But it does feel, you know, I think also yeah, I mean, hopefully with age comes wisdom and you know, life experience, and so I think all that in some way can end up in a song. But I think it's harder.
Yeah, and
And
it's cool.
time is not as prevalent, you know. I just don't have as much time. You know, I've got a job and I got two kids, and you know, I'm busy. You know, back then we spent all of our free time in the practice. That was our job. So, you know, I had all the time in the world to write songs, and you know, we lived in that practice studio. We were always there, you know. Now we're lucky if we practice once a week, you know. It's just a whole different thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true. Like, and it's crazy that Ben are sounding better than ever, you know, because yeah, you got less time, but you really took advantage of those moments to do something that is good. So it's not easy. And yeah, you're right. It's that's the main difference. Most band, you know, there's a few band that are still, you know, living from touring and releasing records. Really a few.
Yeah, I mean, that was never the plan. You know, our plan was to we wanted to have a new record that we could go out and play. You know, we wanted to make a new record before we, as the kind of catalyst to restart things. But the plan has always been to for it to just be a hobby and to not do it full time. You know, we're not going to tour. We'll do festivals and we'll do weekend shows where we'll fly and go do some stuff. But yeah, we don't own a van. We're not gonna, you know, get back on the road, you
No.
know, hundreds of days a year. So, you know, the goal is just to try and do the fun stuff, the stuff that we want to do, and that makes sense. And yes, it means we won't get to play everywhere we want to play, and we won't get to do all the things. But you know, the idea was to just to be able to add in this cool thing to our lives, and like, hey, let's, you know, take a few days off from work and, you know, go play a festival somewhere and come back. Or once a year, this year we're going to go to Europe. Maybe next year we'll go somewhere else exotic and, take a week and go somewhere else cool. So that's the idea.
Yeah, and the possibility are there. That's the main difference, as you mentioned. There's way more festival, and these are both people know you guys, and it's cool. The fans will do the road trip, and that's part of it. And you gotta be a rare thing, so people catch them live when you
Yeah.
can,
Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, yeah, let's hope. Fingers crossed.
like the rare Pokemon, like catch Teasel Boy live, catch them
Exactly.
all.
Chizarazard. I don't know. Charizard. I don't know. I don't know my Pokemon. It's been a
No,
long time since my kids were into Pokemon, so I don't know.
yeah. Mine too, like 2 years ago. But anyway, but that's cool. It's cool that you're still doing it on your own turf, and you're gonna have fun with that. That's the main important thing because there's band that got lost in the process. Touring band, and understood that sometimes you have to take a step forward, backward, and then you get back at it and you understand why you're still doing it.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time, I had no interest in revisiting it or doing it. I was just done, and I didn't play music. I just needed some space from it. But I missed it. You know.
Yeah, because when you wrote those songs, those moments, that the nostalgia, of course, but playing those songs also. When you get back at it, it's like running. You don't want to go running, but when you start, you're like, oh, that's cool. Let's do
It's
it
been
again.
it's been really fun. Like, we just recently started learning all the older songs because for a long time we were focused on getting the record ready. And so we were just kind of working on those songs. But it's been fun to listen back to the old records and to play through the songs. And, it's like riding a bike. The muscle memory's there. Like my fingers just kind of know where to go. And it's like, oh, yeah, some of these songs are really cool and fun to play. I'm like, well, did we always play it this fast? This feels much faster than we ever played it. Yeah, but it's been fun. It's been fun revisiting the catalog and just going through stuff.
That's the age.
Yeah, totally.
So the first records was released in 1996. How was the recording back in the days? You guys didn't have much money. How was the process of recording that record?
The first record.
Yes.
Um,
Rock.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, you're right. We made it for relatively inexpensively. We recorded it, I think, all in 6 days, and we mixed it in maybe 2, so it was maybe 8 days total. The way that our contract worked with Fat Records was that each record we'd have a slightly bigger budget. But we were just thrilled to be making a record with a producer that we knew and to be in a studio and making a real record. So, and we had nothing to compare it to other than, the kind of semi-professional studios we'd recorded demos in before. But to be in a real studio was awesome. It was fast. But again, it was a blast just to be, we learned a lot from Ryan Green. We didn't, I don't think we were very sophisticated in our harmonies, and he did a lot in terms of arrangement and trimming parts. And we'd never worked with the producer, so having somebody else who had creative input in the songs was cool. And somebody whose opinion we respected and trusted, and who'd made a bunch of records was awesome.
Yeah, and it's cool to work with Ryan at the moment where it's kind of his peak, is getting to the legend he is now, because back in the days, he worked with all those bands, but it took time for people to realize, who's behind those records. So I'm sure it was exciting to see him work, but also to learn from that process because he don't push band. He really tried to understand and just getting the best out of everyone the fastest
Yeah,
he
we
can.
learned we learned a lot from making those. I mean, we made 4 records with him. We wouldn't have kept going back if we didn't like him and enjoy his process. And he worked us hard, but we learned a ton. We learned a lot. This was the first record that we made without Ryan. But yeah, they were all fun to make in their own way. And no matter how much time you have, whether it's 6 days or 3 weeks, you still run out of time. I think we had maybe 3 weeks on Rode Hard and Put Away Wet, and you still run out of time. So
Wow.
so you just sort of like you can stretch stuff out, but it just yeah. And now it's kind of people aren't spending that kind of money on records anymore either, because the music, you don't sell records anymore. So it's hard to justify spending a lot of money on a record if you're not going to sell any.
It's so true. It's so true. And like if vinyl costs so much, you really have to sell a lot to get the deal, to be worth it. But
Yeah.
it's still great, the four records as each one of them have something special. And even if you did it in such a rush of time, at the end it's so cool that people still singing and listen to them, because yeah, again, if it were easy, everybody would do this, but it's a lot of pressure. And your
Yeah.
kids, you're like, okay, I want to have fun too.
Yeah, we used to, in order, often, sometimes in order to get the songs done, like I'd have to book studio time, and we'd have to know, okay, in May we're going into the studio, like we better have the record written and rehearsed because we can't show up with nothing. So sometimes it was that motivator, is like, okay, we got to be done. This time we were done before we booked the time. Because we had a lot of time, but yeah, it was always fun. I really enjoy the process of making a record. It's not for everybody. I'm not like a gear nerd or a technical nerd, but it's just it's different from from being in the rehearsal room and from playing live. It's a different animal, but it's fun. It's cool to hear all the layers and to hear it come together and to kind of tweak on all the parts and to do the harmonies and all the little things that kind of make it shine.
Yeah, sometimes it's through details, that you get something that you're really proud of, because
Or you
it
have some
kind.
vision in your head that you can't fully capture in the rehearsal room, and so it's not until you're actually recording that you can sort of see if your ideas are good, or sort of put them, see them kind of come to reality.
So you guys gonna leave for Europe. How many dates are you doing?
8.
Wow, it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, 8 shows, 8 days, 3 festivals, 1 show with Good Riddance, and all the rest are headlining shows. There's a couple with Versus the World, a couple with Urethane, I think. Should be great. It's been ages. I have no idea how my nearly 50-year-old body will respond to sitting in the van for hours on end, or how much my back will hurt, but we'll see.
That it's after the adrenaline gonna get you through that.
Yeah, yeah. Or how my voice will hold up. I mean, I don't know. It's been so long.
Wow, it's gonna be exciting. It's crazy.
Yeah.
People go grab tickets. Of course, we're gonna wait for you in Quebec, Canada. Bookers, promoter, festival. We got great festival here, like the Poudza this weekend. There's also the Red Bridge. I know a lot of festival, I'm sure, would be proud to open their arms and get you back here.
Yeah, we got a nice offer from Puza this year. Unfortunately, we just weren't going to be ready in time to have learned a set and been ready to play. So unfortunately, we had to say no. But yeah, I mean, I would say that that area, Canada was always great for us. Montreal, Quebec, even Calgary, Edmonton. Always great spots. And so once we get a little deeper into the routing, I'm sure that those will be spots that will hit. We'd love to do all those festivals, and we for sure want to come back to those places. I could never understand why the California or the skate punk bands were huge, but I remember being with Strung Out on our very first Canadian tour, and they just kept saying, wait till we get to Quebec, you're not going to believe how big this place is. And sure enough, we get there, and we played the Spectrum or whatever it was called, and was huge, just a huge place. It was wild. So God bless Quebec.
Thank you, Dave. You know, even if it takes 2 or 3 years, we wait 20 years plus.
Yeah, there
So,
you go.
man, we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait. When you come, we're gonna go nuts.
Yes, good.
And
Us
and
too.
co- and congratulations with the new records. What's the best way to directly encourage you guys if people wanna grab it, buy it, if they got music budget?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, which is diesel-boy.com, there are links to get tickets for all the shows in Europe. There's also, we're going to do 2 shows before we leave in Portland and Seattle. Those will be our first shows in 20 years. And there's also links on the website to pre-order the record. Canada, Europe, US. Yeah, or find us on Facebook and Instagram, and there's links from all those spots to get this. SBÄM Records is putting out the record, so you can also check out their website.
Stephen is amazing. And there's a lot of guys like him, that are pillar to the scene. It's great.
Yep.
Dave, thank you so much. Seriously, it's so cool. We're celebrating 15 years as a radio show, and
Awesome.
we're gonna hear the interview on our 700 episode. And man, we needed something special. What best than Diesel Boy?
Thanks so much. It was lovely chatting with you, and congrats on your 700th episode. And hopefully we'll see you in Quebec before too long.
Hell yeah. Have fun with the tour. Have fun playing the new stuff, the old stuff, and say hi to everyone in the band. And let's do that again, man, my friend. And people go listen to it. If you don't have any money to buy it, we get it. We're punk rockers, family first, man. But learn the lyrics and go sing them loud.
Thank you. Yes, for sure. Thank you. Nice chatting.
Hell yeah. Bye bye, Dave. Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Prescription is what you need. No more inhibition. Set yourself free. Just let go. That's my only plea. A punk rock prescription is what you need.